Hi, everyone. I am Kelly, and this is Vote Her In. Vote Her In is a collaboration between Two Broads Talking Politics and Rebecca Sive. Rebecca is the author of Vote Her In, Your Guide to Electing Our First Woman President, Next Woman President. I always screw that up in the middle. But Rebecca is going to talk about something else that she has going on. So I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca now. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Kelly. Glad to be here. We all have to keep busy and do what we can to help women move forward and make our dreams for women and girls come true. So one of my pandemic projects, I decided to write yet another book. And, God forbid you should just like lay around and whatever, read bad novels or something. So seriously, I wrote a book. It's called Make Her Story Your Story. And it's a journal workbook for women who want to be political activists and women who want to be public leaders. And the idea of the book is, similar to what First Lady Michelle Obama did in her journal from her autobiography, Becoming. It's a sort of guide where you kind of work your way through a series of ideas to think about, ways to sort of plan your time and what you want to do next, and interspersed with sort of inspirational messages and graphics that hopefully will compel people to use this journal. So while you may be journaling on your personal life or your family life or your kids, this is a journal for you as you imagine your own role in the larger world. And the book will come out in a pre-sale sometime in the month of October, in this month that we are in. I can't even believe that. And will be published on January 2nd of 2022. The idea there, I think, this sounds sort of corny, but is new year, new you, right? We all kind of sit around, even if we try to avoid it and make these resolutions. But a new you is every woman can make her story. And to do that, what I thought would be fun for you, our listeners, and for us is to hear from two women who are two of my dear girlfriends, former students, women I so admire, Alex Sims and Sol Flores, and they are here with us, as you can see on your screen, to talk with us about their own routes to making her story their story. And so we're going to hear from them a little bit about what they did, how they've done it, why it can be done, and whatever lessons they feel they want to share. And I'm sure there's lots more than we can cover today, but to begin. So very briefly, let me tell you about Sol and Alex. Sol is Deputy Governor in the state of Illinois for our Governor JB Pritzker. She has a portfolio around health and human services, which in any state is huge, but here is particularly huge with the third largest city in the country. Prior to that, she was one of the sort of founding people of an organization called Casa Norte, became the executive director, the CEO, did amazing things there helping homeless youth, and has had a variety of other roles. But Sol has a wonderful story about her route to making her story. And our second guest is Alex Sims, equally extraordinary. She's a political consultant in Chicago, began her political career really, I think, in the Barack Obama years and campaign, decided she liked Chicago and Chicagoans. She's originally from Detroit and has really gone on to do some incredible work for Elizabeth Warren, continuing for Barack Obama, for a number of Illinois state officials, also including Governor Pritzker. And so here they are, and we're going to just kind of jump right in and ask Alex and Sol to, I guess, should we go in alpha order and then alpha order backwards? How's that?
Yes, so Alex should go first.
Thanks, Sol.
So if you all would just take turns, kind of tell your story as her story, how you got here and why you stay here.
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm originally from Detroit, and I came, to this work. I was always kind of rooted in this work. My family believed in always telling my brother and I to kind of never forget where we came from. And that's what drives me every day to do what I do. So I'm really proud to work for people like State's Attorney Kim Foxx, to work for people like Governor JB Pritzker. Today we broke ground on the Obama Library, so I'm very excited to work for people like President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. But for me personally, I have a new puppy who's walking around back right here, just if you hear him bark. So for me personally, I think that what my parents instilled in myself and my brother has helped me kind of push every day, in my journey. And I kind of always remembered at times, and I'll take just one story and then pass it to Sol. I'll take the State's Attorney Foxx story. When the Jussie Smollett scandal broke out for her, I was working on a mayoral campaign at the time, but it was I think about 2 weeks before the mayoral election when that happened. I called her and I said, "This looks kind of bad. Do you need any help?" And she said, "No, I'm fine. I think it'll be fine. Like, they don't understand. It'll be fine." 2 weeks later, I called her. I was like, "It still looks kind of bad. Do you want any help?" But I say that because, I ran kind of into the storm to help someone that I really cared about and saw and knew that she cared about women. Today also, I think that was today. It's been a long day. It was yesterday. The verdict came down for the R. Kelly case. That's something that State's Attorney Foxx stood up and stood for women on. I think that as women, when you kind of run to the storm, you lead with what you're passionate about. It can take you far. And I think that that's what I've kind of always tried to do. So throughout my career, I've taken a lot of those steps, and I now have a firm that with about 7 staff, we represent about 15 clients. There he goes. We have about 15 clients, and we're really proud to be where we are right now. So, Sol, your turn.
Wonderful. Well, I think I have a similar story and background to Alex, in that the reason why I do my work, and I love the work, is that it's really deeply rooted in my family's background. And so my family is originally from Puerto Rico, and they came to Chicago in the 1950s and 60s and, made a life for themselves and experienced all the isms that one could, and yet worked really hard to raise a family steeped in cultural values and centered around family. And I grew up in a household where my aunts and uncles were engaged in student politics. They were members of everything that was happening politically in the 60s and 70s. And I have lots of pictures of me in a little stroller, doing marches, and lots of, memories growing up, participating civically. And what I saw was them expressing their politic, right? And they may not have said this is politics. They felt like this was justice and this was the right thing to do for people. And so, of course, growing up like that, you can't help but it's in your DNA, it's in your veins. It's what is expected of you in some ways, to participate and to give back and to step up. And we all know the saying, to much is given, much is expected. No wonder that in 2002, I became the founding executive director of La Casa Norte. And that was after a career in private consulting, which was amazing and fantastic, and got to fly around the world and meet amazing people, and made more money out of college than my mom had, in her then 20 plus career, but continued to experience all the isms that we had previously. It was always assumed I was the secretary, I was the receptionist, certainly not the consultant. And it was actually a set of women who helped take me under their wing and mentor me. And that's how I was able to have, I think, a really robust career in consulting. 9/11 happened, and I started volunteering, and that's how I became the founding executive director of La Casa Norte. And that was an amazing experience. I worked there for 18 years and had the breadth of experiences there in terms of being a social entrepreneur and what it means to start payroll and group health insurance, all the way to, at the end of my career there, building and managing multi-million-dollar capital campaigns, multi-million-dollar operating campaigns, but also being seen and being used in the way that I should as an advocate for issues around poverty, housing, Latino issues, and being a person that could speak to mayors and senators and local elected officials around the needs and challenges and strengths of the community that I was living in and helping to, walk alongside. And that was an amazing career. And Rebecca, I know we'll get into it later, but I did this fun thing along the way between La Casa Norte and joining the Pritzker administration, which is I ran for Congress. And that was also a unique experience. I know we'll have more, and Alex will have a lot to say, I'm sure, about running campaigns. But that's also part of my story, is that I think it helped to open up a whole new network of individuals to me, including Rebecca. This is how you and I got, actually, it's not how we got to meet, but it's how we got to form deeper relationship, which is wonderful. And then 2.5 years ago, I joined the Pritzker administration at the beginning, and I serve as deputy governor today over the Health and Human Services portfolio. And that has been both, terrifying, as we've had to deal with a pandemic, and frankly, for 2 of those years, do it really alone on an island without the support and leadership at the federal level. Thank goodness that we are steeped in a set of values here in this state that allowed us to make decisions to save the most lives possible. And along with fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, doing a lot of other fantastic things that are about ending poverty, or nothing's ended, right? But strengthening a social safety net around poverty, around hunger, around women's issues, around reproductive rights, around anti-violence. I mean, I'm loving this work more and more every day. And I know we'll talk about that in a little bit too.
So can you just go back a second to running into the storm, which is a really interesting idea, Alex. And if you would, both of you, just talk for a minute, and then I'll turn over to Kelly. But talk about how you, in terms of creating your story, why running into the storm is so important while to proceeding.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it's so, I mentioned just my family being a strong root in what I do. Even for us, even my family, we even brought the plantation back and that we were as slaves. So we go back there every year, every second Sunday of August, right? So I had a pretty privileged upbringing, so I'm pretty used to being kind of the only person of color in the room. That's not an uncomfortable position for me. It shouldn't be the same situation, but it's not an uncomfortable situation for me. But I remember my first organizing job, I was in a room once where it was the Building and Construction Trade Union in St. Louis, Missouri. And then we were at a pipe fitters hall. And I was one of 1,000 almost, probably white men maybe. And there might have been 2 or 3 other Black men in there. And I think I was the only woman. And I had to speak in front of the whole hall about what message frame I thought that we should use as organizers. That was a storm that I kind of had to run into. In that moment, I think I learned so much. The person who put me there was Nancy Cross. She at that time she was the head of SEIU's healthcare local in St. Louis. To this day, Nancy and I still have a close relationship. She just gave me a role as helping run Tashara Jones' campaign in St. Louis, and not Tashara, as our new mayor of St. Louis. But it was kind of a woman helping another woman navigate a storm, and it taught me so much. I think in those moments, like leaning in, I hate that term because I know it's from that book, but like, you know, running into that situation, you do really truly gather a lot of information in those uncomfortable moments. And you find out a lot about yourself, and you'll surprise yourself. Honestly, I think your gut really comes out at those times. And sometimes you'll mess up, sometimes you won't. But I'll guarantee you'll learn something from that. And I found myself in a couple of those throughout my career. And I continued organizing throughout my career. I don't know if that helps.
So I think similar to Alex, it's really about finding that place of discomfort or being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's where growth happens. And so for me, in founding La Casa Norte, you know, this is a startup in many ways, and there wasn't agreement for the organization, for the mission, for what we were up to. And in fact, there were lots of roadblocks. I mean, without going into who they were, but I had male CEOs of other nonprofits tell me, you know, why should we apply for that? You know, why should you apply for that grant? You'll never get it. I've had elected aldermen tell me, get in line for that grant, or get in line for that TIF money, or, you know, good luck. And what drove me was being mission focused and understanding, being seated my work every day in a set of values that I believed in. And, you know, I could articulate that at the time as justice and love. And I said, if I'm going to be here working for this mission, then no matter what, no matter who craps on me, the personal, I'm tired at the end of the day, or whatever it is, this is why I'm here. And so removing the personal and staying focused on my set of values and the mission is what had me make it through the storm. In terms of no matter what, like no matter what, this is what I'm up to. And I mean, you know, women have such a strong sense of resiliency and the ability to bounce back. And so we all have it deep in our, you know, we have wells and wells of reserve of it. And sometimes you just got to pull it out and say, I'm going to use it all up today. And then for the next week, I'm going to be really tired and quiet, and someone's got to help fill up my vessel. But running into the storm is where growth happens. To Alex's point, it's where you learn about yourself. And it's also where you are asking for contribution, right? Because you're in the storm and you need help. You need those life rafts. And so getting really good at that. And guess what? There are a lot of people who want to support you. There are a lot of people who want to reach out, right? Because they're like-minded. They're attracted to what you're up to. They're also steeped in the same mission, et cetera. And then it's also a place for contribution. Again, where growth comes from.
So you've both referenced being mentored and helped by other women along the way. Could you talk to sort of then helping the next generation of women and being the mentors yourselves as you are building your own Her Story, you know, what you're doing to help make sure that that the women coming behind you are also able to do that?
Sure. During the pandemic, I launched this program called the Black Bench. It's kind of a nonprofit that trains kind of the next generation of Black leaders on how to run for office, be operatives, like be in the public affairs sector and all these different roles. One thing that was interesting was actually 2 times so just in 15 days, we had 200 people apply, because there happens to be a gap in our opinion, a gap between kind of generations in terms of Black knowledge that's being passed on, right? So the chairs of the program are Secretary White and Jackie Grimshaw, and we have a whole bunch of people who are helping to teach these lessons. But in about 15 days, 200 people applied, double the amount of men applied than women, which was surprising. but not that surprising. We made sure though the class was even. So we had, 50% women, 50% men in the total class. I kind of made sure to go out of my way as much as possible to get as many women involved as I could, that I thought brought diverse opinions. We wanted the class to truly represent what Chicago looked like, and Black Chicago looked like. But I've just found that there's so many amazing women who've reached out and helped me. I want to do that the same. So for some that are in the Black Bench class who text me on a daily now, who I help throughout their personal crises and professional crises, for some that aren't in the class, who I work with on a regular basis. I think it's just important for us to be there for one another. And I think that what I did find interesting though about that, the fact that the double the men applied, I want to do everything I can, especially for Black women, to make it incredibly clear that they belong in that room, and that their voices are needed in that room. So I know that someone like having Jackie Grimshaw a part of our program, her voice, just building my relationship with her has been huge, and I want to have that available for others. So that's something I'm kind of working on right now.
Yeah, so I think building off of Alex's theme of a real intentionality, in leading at La Casa Norte, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't the only person that looked like me, and knowing that the clients that we were walking alongside, that we were serving, were all primarily, almost 99.5% people of color, Black and Latino. So I wanted to make sure that who they saw in leadership and who they were working with every day looked like them, had a shared sense of experience. And I took that responsibility very seriously. So in building our leadership teams, it's not a surprise. It's well known that in the philanthropy world, it is overrepresented by white people, white women, and if there is diversity, gay men, but not a lot of people of color in senior positions, particularly in philanthropy or in the fundraising field. And so one of the things we took on pretty early was a grow your own program. And we had to do that, right? I felt very strongly that if we were going to have Black and Latino leadership in our development department, well, we had to give people a chance, and we had to grow them, and we had to mentor them, and we had to put the time in, and we had to accept that there was going to be, a series of failure, and there was going to be learning growth, and then there was going to be a lot of success, and that I was going to personally take that on, since that was a significant part of my role as the executive director in fundraising. And, and I'm proud to say that, for a while there, 3 of our 4 individuals in the development department identified as people of color. And we took that same lesson and we did it with the finance director, with the CFO. And we did that same thing with the director of programs. And we did that same thing with our, supervisors and managers. A real intentionality of finding talent, growing it, having folks know that there is a leadership path for them. And that gave me a lot of pleasure, to be frank, to be honest with you, when I would, hire, a case manager or someone, who was sort of at the entry level, and they'd come and they'd see all these people in leadership that look like them. And that was something that attracted them to the organization. And that I want to be here. I want to be a part of that. And that was great. And the other thing I didn't mention was also, though, the LGBTQ community. So that was also really important. We were an ally organization. I consider myself an ally advocate. And so really important that they were also, represented in leadership roles. I took that same intentionality when I joined the Pritzker transition team as a co-chair, and then that same intentionality when I joined the Pritzker team as deputy governor. And I see it as my role to put great talent that includes women, people of color, queer folk, folk with disabilities at the front of the line with resumes, because the benches are there, but it takes someone, an effort, a team to say, there is always going to be the 10 white guy resumes for this one Black woman resume, or for this one Latino gay guy resume. And I feel proud about that fact. And I'm proud of the folks that we've hired in senior positions within the administration. And then as you go down, I mean, there's, second in charge, third in charge, major departments being led for the first time by a diverse set of individuals. And hence we're getting the conversation, we're getting the validity, and we're getting the progress that we want because those voices are at that table.
So, I come from the generation ahead of you. And in my generation, it was about getting women, any woman, right, to the table. And I don't think I've shared a lot of stories here about that, but I certainly could at some point. But we don't have time to get into all of this. You all will come back, I hope. But I wonder if we could close by, if you could perhaps each tell maybe an inspirational story about, because I think about, how did I screw up the courage to walk into the room when it was all these white guys? Maybe there were one or two Black men since it was Chicago, but that was about it, right? And I knew I had something to contribute, right? Just as we all have. So if you could, perhaps we could close out with, make her story is incredibly scary, right? And it is about a sense of self. So maybe a tip to our listeners to close about how you have maintained the sense of self while running into the storm and prevailing when you got there.
So Sol, you may want to go first.
Okay. We talked a lot about that early on, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, putting your values first. I think having a strong sense of community. Who do you rely on, right? I'm on these text threads with incredible women, with incredible leaders, with people who I can, who in some ways in my previous role competed, for dollars or for attraction or board members. But when we were in network together, it was about support. And so I think that's incredibly important for women. I also think, there's the statistic that, men look at a resume or a job description and think if they can do 10% of the work, that job's mine. And, women look at that same job description and say, if I can do 90% of it, that job's mine. And so understanding that we have a set of strengths and experiences and knowledge, and not doubting ourselves and not counting ourselves out. And so that's a lesson that I've had to learn. I can't be the one to count me out, because there's a whole host of people waiting to do that for me, either intentionally or unintentionally, with bias, or because we disagree on positions. So I think those are the lessons that I would say to, the next women coming up. And we need you. The chair is calling for you. And guess what? When you show up and there is no empty chair, you bring one, you make room, right? I mean, power is not handed and given, it is taken. And so I encourage young women, step up and go take your power.
Yes, I agree with Sol. Like Shirley Chisholm said, bring your folding chair. Sorry, I had the puppy barking. So I've had a lot of friends have to tell me, especially now, that I need to kind of step into my own light sometimes. And as a consultant, I'm really used to telling all of my clients to do so. That's my job. So I have a lot of clients, we have elected officials that it's our job to make them look great and to step into them. And then when it's your job to do so,
please dial emergency services directly from your phone.
Stop, Alexa. When it's your turn to do so, it's just kind of strange for you and it feels kind of awkward. But I am still an incredibly competitive person, and I'm driven by value. So usually when you see me step into a conversation and I kind of get passionate, as if I'm advocating for a cause, or if I'm advocating for a person, or if I'm really driven, then it's almost like my tone completely shifts. It's a different person who you see come out. So usually when I'm kind of need to draw on my courage, I have to remind myself who I'm in there fighting for, what I'm in there advocating for, what the topic is about. And then that's when I really see kind of my courage come out. Remember my value, kind of remember why I'm there. And I find myself kind of really stepping into my light. I'm a mama's girl too. I rely on my mom still. I mean, I'm 33. I still make that call, you know, and then I have a great group of girlfriends and mentors that I call very, very regularly for pep talks when I need it, you know, and guy friends too. A great group of guy friends too, you know. So I think it's something that everyone should have.
Mm-hmm. So we promised to be short and sweet, and I want to ask Kelly to formally thank you. But as all of you go out there and make her story your story, I hope you will look back on and listen again to what Alex and Saul have shared with us tonight. It's really very special. So the two of you, mwah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. This was really great, and I think very inspirational. So I hope that everyone will take these stories and these lessons and go make her story yourself. All right. Goodbye, everyone.